Money, power, glory. Nothing quite motivates players like the promise of magic items. While delving through dungeons or perusing a bizarre bazaar, you'll probably hand out your fair share of magic items throughout a campaign. Gearing up is a great way to reward your players for completing quests and giving them even more options to tackle all the different problems that you'll be throwing at them. But knowing how to hand out magic items can be tricky for both new and veteran dungeon masters. And once you give your player that +4 longsword, they're not giving it back. So in today's video, I want to give you tips for how to give your players cool and fun magic items without breaking your game. Without further ado, let's get started. I won't lie, it is fun crafting magic items. Coming up with cool powers, trying to match them to each of your players, thinking of all the awesome ways they'll use that new robe or sweet boots. You can really let your imagination run wild when you're crafting magical creations for your party. But especially when you're first starting out with the game, it is really easy to make an item that seems safe, but is actually way too powerful. Until you've played for a while and have a better grasp of the game, it's hard to know what will be balanced and what will be broken. For example, when I was first starting out as a DM, I gave a druid an amulet that would let them wild shape into a bird whenever they wanted, well before the level when druids would normally get that power. That is busted, but because I was newer, I had no idea. Books like the Dungeon Master's Guide and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything are full of really cool, well-balanced magic items that you can give to your players. Even for more experienced DMs who still sometimes need inspiration because they craft absolutely insane magic items, me, using pre-existing ones for an easy bit of loot that you can throw in can make your life so much easier. Everyone wants their game to feel different and unique, but do not sleep on the magic items that are already out there. Your players will love them all the same. Let's be honest, players aren't the only ones who get really excited by magic items. When putting together your next adventure, dreaming up all of the powerful items that your players could someday acquire is a big part of the fun. It can be really tempting to drop some super powerful items into your game early, like +3 longswords or rings of invisibility. If your players are happy, then who cares, right? Be careful about going too big too quickly. Even one really strong magic item can completely change the game for lower level parties, making them punch well above their weight. But if you throw stronger monsters at them in return, you risk hitting them with something that could down them in one blow, or even lead to a TPK. And that's not even considering the fairness of it all. If you give your paladin a holy avenger at level 3, well, why don't the sorcerer, rogue, and cleric get really cool weapons too? Part of what makes long D&D campaigns satisfying is the build-up. The story is growing more complex with time, your players getting stronger and stronger the more monsters they slay. Starting the party off with simple magic items and then giving them progressively more powerful gear as they level up will help keep the progression of your campaign feeling natural and worthwhile. The legendary weapons can wait, even if they are super cool. D&D is not a perfectly balanced game, and anytime you add a magic item to the mix, there's a potential for that balance to fall even more out of whack. But on the whole, each player should be progressing at about the same rate and feel pretty evenly matched. That's where stat boosting items come in. Weapons that add to a player's attack rolls, or a headband that increases their wisdom score. Stat boosting items could be a great reward for your party and really let your players feel like they're gaining strength. But if you're not careful, they can very quickly tip the scales too far in your player's favor. In D&D, there's only 20 potential numbers you can roll each time you pick up that D20. When your players are rolling dozens of times a session, sometimes even more in combat, a difference of just 1 or 2 can have a real impact on their overall results. That's doubly true for items that modify their ability scores. Adding 2 to their dexterity or intelligence might not seem like much, but that bonus is going to all of their skills, saving throws, attacks, and spells that are made with that stat. Even small bonuses can have far-reaching effects. Another aspect is that despite your best efforts, you can never really know who's going to claim a specific magic item. Sure, some are locked between classes, but the vast majority of them are up for grabs. For example, I once gave my players a belt of Frost Giant strength, expecting that my already very strong barbarian would take it to increase his strength score even higher. He's already succeeding on any strength checks or saves I throw at him, so what's a little more, right? Well, that party thought the same thing, and figured instead of the barbarian, why not max out the strengths of one of the characters who struggle with it? So my party ended up with the strongest rogue in existence, not at all what I had planned for. I'm not saying you should never give out items that boost your player's stats. I'm guilty of doing it probably more often than I should. But make sure that you put some thought into it first, and that you can live with your rogue never failing a strength saving throw again. Sometimes you need to teach the party a lesson, and that lesson might be Don't pick up strange artifacts in haunted tombs that are surrounded by death traps and bloodstains. Cursed items are a lot of fun, and having your players try to get the most out of their new toy while dealing with its cursed nature can be a great challenge to give to your party. But sometimes DMs can overdo it a bit with the cursed items. If every other item that you give your players is cursed, eventually they're either going to start casting Identify on literally everything they touch, or they're going to stop going after magic items altogether. Getting new gear and upgrades should be fun for your party. If you hit them with a curse every time they try and take something that looks cool, they're going to just feel stupid and stop wanting to take anything that you give them. When you do give players a cursed item, if they have a means for breaking that curse, let them. And if they want to go on a quest to try and get free of the item's grasp, even better. In the meantime, I'd suggest using curses that have some sort of gameplay effect that isn't too debilitating, but instead is a challenge that they can try and work around, or something that will mix things up and keep them on their toes. Giving them a -2 to everything isn't nearly as fun as forcing them to make a wisdom save so they don't attack their allies with their shiny new axe, or making a random wild magic effect happen each time they roll a natural 1. Curses can be fun for both you and the player, but make sure you're still giving them plenty of regular, not desecrated items too. There are some game mechanics that, when you put it into a magic item, will be more balance shattering than others. Things like flight, invisibility, and unlimited spell usage will completely change up how your players interact with the world, oftentimes making it way more difficult to challenge them and place obstacles in their path that will be little more than a minor hassle. Instead of giving your level 1 party that broom of flying or ring of invisibility, don't forget that consumable items can be just as fun too. Of course, everyone thinks of healing potions. If your players are anything like mine, the first thing they do when they reach a new town is see if they have an apothecary. But consumable magic items can do so much more than just heal the party. For a limited time, you can give them access to all sorts of fun powers and abilities that would be game altering if they had them 24/7. Become invulnerable to fire damage for a minute? Great for that dungeon in the nearby volcano. Ability to breathe underwater. Sounds good for reaching that shipwreck that their latest quest pointed at. Flight for 1 minute? Now they really have to decide when the best time to pop that potion is. Don't forget that consumables can be all sorts of things besides potions too. They could be little mushrooms sold to your players by a friendly roadside gnome, rare fruit that they pick up in the jungle because the ranger rolled really well on survival, or honey they collected from the nest of giant bees that attacked them because the bard rolled poorly on survival. They all don't need to be edible either. Beads that contain spells, or a small rod that they snap to unleash an effect work perfectly fine too. You can get really creative with their effects and forms, but don't forget about consumables when you're handing out magic items. In the King Arthur mythology, the title hero is given the powerful sword Excalibur by the Lady of the Lake, signifying his right to rule the land. The sword is a symbol of his royalty and strength on the battlefield, nearly as iconic as the king himself. So it'd be a little weird if, halfway through his tales, he found another sword in a cave that gives him a +2 to his attack. So he chucks Excalibur in his bag of holding and never thinks of it again. Sometimes, either for character or story reasons, it makes sense for one of your players to carry around some gear for a long time. Maybe it's the shield that was given to them by their mother with her dying breath, carried by knights of their household for centuries. Or a wand that contains the essence of the warlock's fiendish patron, granting them the powers that they now covet. Rather than letting those precious items stay stagnant, you can consider giving items different stages to help them evolve with the player. Instead of giving them something new every time they delve into a dungeon, you can have the magic item increase in power or gain new abilities to help the player. You could tie these upgrades to player levels, certain milestones they achieve in the story, or even a cumulative score based on skill check rolls. In one of my games, I had a player who wanted to become the best angler in the land, so I gave them a fishing rod that would level up and give them bigger and bigger bonuses on survival checks made for fishing. And when they made a check using it, I would add what they rolled to their overall score and see when it would upgrade. It's fine to give your players something entirely new to test out, but when it comes to those magic items that they've grown really attached to, consider letting them evolve along with your players rather than being sold for some extra drinking money down the line. No matter how many players you have and how many abilities they possess, no party will be able to do everything. There will always be gaps in your players' options based on which classes they chose, how many feats they take, and of course, which magic items they have at their disposal. Magic items can help you fill in those gaps and expand what your players can do, but they can also make some of your players' abilities redundant, meaning they'll feel less useful to the party as time goes on. For example, Say you have a Circle of the Moon druid in your party who loves to wild shape. They use it in combat, to sneak into places, or to scout ahead of the group while traversing dangerous terrain. Well, if you give your party's warlock a ring of animal forms that lets them shift into little creatures at will, you're basically making the druid's powers no longer necessary for the party to succeed. When you're crafting magic items or handing ones out from the books, be careful that whatever powers and abilities they have won't step on your player's toes. Everybody wants their character to feel useful and like they have a role in the team. Don't let them get replaced by a magic item instead. Those are my tips to help you give your players all sorts of fun and exciting magic items without completely destroying your campaign. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have tips of your own for giving your party new gear or favorite magic items that you love to pass out, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like and consider subscribing to the Bard's College. I make content all about D&D and DMing, and I always appreciate the support. But for now, good luck, and remember, crit your players.